Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Oh, hi! If you're looking for another spooky and funny podcast to add to your rotation, check out Anything Bones, now part of the Podmoth Network.
Hey Boneheads, I'm Sophie Schwartz.
And I'm Caitlin Hart.
And we're the hosts of Anything Bones, the podcast where we talk about bones and bone-related topics.
Soph, what are bone-related topics?
Thank you for asking, Caitlin. This can be anything from mausoleums to murderers, famous skeletons to cadaver dogs.
Bone churches, mummies, serial killers. You'll hear about them all.
And sometimes we have guests stop by and tell us their favorite bony tales.
Check out Anything Bones on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or wherever your little heart desires.
We release new episodes every Saturday.
Bon voyage!
Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Biba.
This is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
And Liz.
We're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. Check them out. They got a lot of really good podcasts. We just joined a true crime, or I did, a true crime group on Facebook that Shelby from Addicted to Crime podcast recommended, and it's really awesome. So thanks, Shelby. I think she recommended it anyway. And this is a new week with a new topic.
Yes.
And Diva, you chose it.
I did. Yes, it's Hitchhiker murders of hitchhikers, and it feels summery because there's like kind of people traveling. It's also a true crime classic, and boy, have a lot of hitchhikers been murdered.
So fucking many.
Once I started researching it, it was like the possibilities. It was like, oh, another. I thought like it was just endless. I had to just call it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on forever. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I was talking to my dad about it last night, and he's like, "Oh, I used to hitchhike all through like the 70s," and I was like, "You lived in Southern California, you hitchhiked, and like you're so lucky. I'm so lucky that he didn't get like."
Oh yeah, if you
murdered.
hitchhiked in 70s and early 80s in California, guaranteed you narrowly missed like 8 serial killers. It's like,
well, he told me when he was 14 years old and he was hitchhiking, a guy picked him up in a pickup truck, and they were driving, and the guy put his hand on my dad's thigh, looked at him and said, "I could really go for some head."
Oh my God, that's horrible. Cindy's laughing, but I'm like, that's disgusting.
It's because it's my dad, so it's either hilarious or makes me uncomfortable, and I'm laughing. I don't know which.
Oh my God, how'd he get away? He just jumped out of the car?
Yes, he literally jumped out at a stop sign.
Horrible.
He waited till the guy was at a stoplight, and he jumped out, and he said the guy like laughed and like drove away, and that was it.
God.
Yeah, and he continued to hitchhike after that because he's fucking brilliant. So
wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
so,
pretty sure my mom hitchhiked too, and also narrowly missed like Ted Bundy and stuff like that. She had the long hair. She was blonde, but she had the perfect haircut for Ted Bundy.
Yeah, the Ted Bundy haircut. Yeah,
yeah.
I hitchhiked in like the 90s, like once, and it was in my hometown, and it was like stupid.
Absolutely not. I mean, I've seen hitchhikers in like modern day, and as we drove by them, we're like, they're gonna get serial killed, you know,
or
like,
they're gonna be the killer. Like that's a thing too.
That's the thing too. We found a couple of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Hitchhiking is just not smart. Don't fucking do it, guys. Real quick here, if you'd like to join us on Patreon, I'm going to be doing Big Ed in the next week.
Inspired by this.
Yes. Yeah. That's patreon.com/twistedlisters. If you'd like to join us on TikTok, it's just @twistedlisters. If you'd like to join us on Instagram, which we are like almost at another threshold, but just can't get over it. So come join us. You can do that at
Twisted Listers PCast. Help us get to 1,000. The thousands.
Yep. If you would like to check out our website, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod.com.
And if you'd like to send us an email, you can do that at
twistedlisterspod@gmail.com.
And please like, rate, review, follow us. We have a lot of fucking followers, dude. I just checked, and it's up by a couple hundred over the last couple months, which is amazing. We love you guys. Please, keep it up. because this is a lot of work. So the support is loved, appreciated. Thank you. Okay, you chose, so I'm going first, right?
Yes.
All right, here we go. I'm going to do Patrick Kearney,
Okay.
aka the Freeway Killer, aka the Trash Bag Killer.
I like the last one.
Yes, it fits his personality, fits who he
So
is.
I like to call people trash bags, as you know.
Yeah, me too. This guy was a trash bag, but he also used trash bags in his murders.
Okay.
He's also one of 3 freeway killers who all operated around the same time in the same area with a very similar MO, which is really fucking weird.
I even thought about that being a list of like the freeway killers because there's so many of them that are called, or like the I-70 killer, the kind of different freeway name killers. But like, would it be too repetitive? I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's a lot of the same stuff.
Right. Well, the thing about these 3 freeway killers is that so the other 2 were William Bonin and Randy Kraft. And Patrick Kearney and Randy Kraft were doing this at the same time. And then William Bonin kind of picked up right when Patrick Kearney stopped. So there was just like a continual, and they were all in Southern California. It was all like young men. It's fucking crazy. So
no end to the freeway killing. So Bonin just picked it up.
Right up.
Yeah.
Between like 1973 and 1983, there were like upwards of like, depending on who you listen to, like 200 murders.
Yeah, the late like 78 to like 83 especially was like a just thick like with serial killers in California specifically.
Yes.
And like that would be a great list too. Just like we put a year bracket around it and like Southern California. And also you have the toolbox killers and the hillside stranglers.
Christ. Yeah.
So
which we covered. Yeah.
Ugh. And they're both kind of operating picking girls up in a similar fashion too.
Yeah. So. There's a lot of like niche killers who overlapped. So kind of fucked up. But anyway, so we're going to talk about Patrick Kearney specifically. He was born in 1939 in East LA. So I think that was 2 years after my grandmother was also born in unincorporated East LA.
Yeah, my grandpa was there too.
Yeah, it was unincorporated at that time. He was raised in Texas, but he spent time in both California and Texas off and on. He was the youngest of 3 boys, and he was also the smallest. At his full adult height, he stood at 5'5", which is how tall I am.
Okay.
So kind of crazy. As a child, he was super small, as you can imagine, super skinny, really dorky. You see photos of him and you're like, there's no way this guy is like a serial killer. He's like a tiny little nothing.
Well, you wouldn't expect.
Not even a little bit. He was often made fun of in school for being gay, even though apparently at the time he did like girls. And I say apparently because as he grew up, he did in fact enter into a gay relationship and also picked up a ton of gay men for random sex, including in Tijuana, where he used his fluency in Spanish to pick up people in the sex trade down there.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of cool. He lived in California and Texas and he spoke Spanish. That's smart. We should all do that.
Sure. Yeah.
You got one thing right. But anyway, so while he was a kid, he was bullied really badly. And this led to him fantasizing about murdering his bullies and specifically skinning them once he murdered them.
Okay, that's very specific.
It's very specific.
Yep.
And something to remember.
Yes.
One thing that Patrick definitely was as a child was sexually deviant, which has absolutely nothing to do with his sexual orientation and more to do with the fact that he started fucking his dog when he was 13.
Oh.
So he was a dog rapist. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. I was going to say you should specify it's non-consensual, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. And this is something that apparently he continued on and off through his life, like his entire free life. I don't know that he had dogs, but I have read in a couple of places that this was something that he did.
Random dogs.
Kind of whenever he had the chance. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
So beyond being bullied, as far as I can tell, his home life was like pretty normal. So I think this has more to do with just how he was born. Like some people are just born broken.
A nature, not nurture thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because his other brothers were like fine. His parents seemed fine. There was no history that I could see of like abuse. It seemed pretty normal.
Gotcha.
So anyway, when he got older, he joined the Air Force, where he was stationed in Texas for a while. He was also married at some point, but it didn't last, and they didn't have any kids.
Okay.
While in Texas, he met David Hill, another married man who was interested in men. They started a relationship, and Dave here divorced his wife to be with Patrick. And then they moved to California. So this was in the late 60s, early 70s. But before this, Patrick had already killed quite a few people.
Oh.
After his arrest, he admitted that his first murder took place in 1962 in Indio, which is out in the desert in California. He'd picked up a 19-year-old man and took him for a ride on his motorcycle. They pulled over, and Patrick, who'd always owned guns, pulled one out and shot the dude in the head. He then had sex with his dead body. I should say he then raped his dead body. He murdered twice more around this time, and one of the victims was this first victim's cousin. So he killed 2 people in the same family in the
Oh my
same year.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
The identities of these 3 men have never been discovered, nor have their bodies, as far as I know. But police believe that he did this because he never, as far as they could tell, he never lied about any of the people that he killed. He was
Okay.
fully truthful. So there's no reason to think that this didn't happen.
Okay.
Additionally, he also murdered a man in 1965 in Orange, California, which is in Orange County. It's actually quite a nice place. I've spent a lot of time there.
Oh.
I mean, it's Orange County, so it's not that nice, but
Yeah, I was like, how nice can it be?
well, Orange County is rich, but it's very, very conservative. So there's like
Yes.
a trade-off.
Right.
So the MO was exactly the same for all of these murders. This young man was never identified either. But again, he admitted to doing this. And I think the body, I don't know if the body was ever found. But in any case, you know, he's shot him, raped his dead body, dismembered him, threw him away.
Ugh.
So in 1967, Patrick and David moved to an apartment in Redondo Beach. They argued a lot. They never broke up, but they got into like fights. And this would lead to Patrick leaving the house for hours at a time. And during that time, he would go hunting.
Mm.
His first kill was a young man who was only known by his first name, George. Patrick picked George up hitchhiking in San Diego and drove him all the way back to his apartment.
Oh,
Yeah. And
in
actually,
LA.
in LA.
Or in Orange. Okay.
No, in LA. And at this point,
Okay.
he was living in Venice Beach. So he seemed to stay in like beach cities, Venice, you know, Redondo.
Sure.
He would go to San Diego. He'd go down to Tijuana. So he liked to stay along the coast. So he drives this guy for like 2 hours back to his house. And I don't know what the deal is with the guy, but he's like down for the ride, invites him in. And as soon as the guy walks into Patrick's house, within moments of stepping into the apartment, Patrick has already shot him in the head and killed him.
Wow.
And you
Does
would
not
think,
wait.
no, not even for a second. And you would think that there's like, you know, the neighbors would hear because it's a fucking gunshot, but he uses a 22 caliber gun, which is
Okay.
small. So it doesn't make a ton of noise. It doesn't like make a huge mess. I don't even know if there's like exit wounds necessarily because it's like
Oh,
not a very
weird.
high powered gun.
I don't know gun stuff, so.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. So after killing this guy who is named George, they only know his first name, he takes him
Okay.
into his bathroom and rapes his body and then also skins him. So
Woo!
living out those bully murdering fantasies.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I just gotta say, I did some. I know a little bit about flaying from like a medieval historical perspective, and
Yeah.
because it used to be a capital punishment essentially in the
Right.
Middle Ages,
Right.
and it takes a long time,
Yep.
and it is a lot of work.
Yep.
It is very labor intensive, and that is really gross to think about. And like, he reminds me of Dahmer a little bit,
Yeah. He's not
a
eating,
scotch.
but he's
No, but,
raping
like-
and he's flaying and he's kind of body experimenting a little bit.
But in the fact that he's a product, not a process killer, you know, he
Yes.
wants the body. He wants to do
Yes.
stuff with a body and like does
Yes.
not want to have the person alive.
Exactly. Agreed. Although I think with Dahmer, he was hoping they could stay alive, but just like
Right.
zombies, obviously.
Well,
just
yeah,
to try
he
to make-
was played around with the zombie thing. Did
right,
not,
but it was
did not
very
work.
he dehumanized his victims and
They just see the bodies as objects.
yes, exactly. So anyway, he buried George behind his garage and waited over a year to kill again for fear of being found out. The next time he killed, I believe, was like 1971. And this was 13-year-old John Demachik, who he
Oof.
picked up hitchhiking
Oh
in
my
Inglewood.
god.
So
What
remember
is this the same time as your dad? Same place? Like,
around that time, my dad would have been 17, I think, at that point. So a little bit older.
yeah, but he was probably
No,
hitchhiking too.
16. So yeah, very, very similar age and definitely around the same time. My dad
And
was born in
place.
55. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my dad was in fucking Montebello, Inglewood, all around here.
Jesus Christ.
I
Like,
know. I'm glad he didn't get murdered because I wouldn't be here right now. Um,
I'm glad he didn't too.
yeah. But unfortunately, 13-year-old John Demachik did get murdered. Exact same MO, shot him, raped him, 13-year-old,
Ugh,
and cut him up, put him in various trash bags, and dumped him. Now, at
hence
some
the trash
point,
bag name.
yes, but we're not even there yet. Like, no, these bodies haven't been found. A lot of these bodies weren't found until he told police where to go.
Okay.
So at some point, they moved from Venice to Redondo, Patrick and Dave. And Patrick also really like honed his murder skills around this time. Like I said,
Murder
he used
skills.
his murder skills. You know, so he
Yeah.
used that smaller gun. He could shoot people in the head without even blowing out his car window. So what he started doing was just murdering people in his car. Like the moment they would get in the car, he would
Mm.
basically just fucking shoot him in the head. He wouldn't even stop driving.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he would drive with his left
Oh
hand
my
and shoot them
god.
with his right hand with this little gun. It's a tiny little gun.
Just like very casual. Just get it out of the way.
Yeah, and then he would leave them slumped over in the front seat and like drive around with them and like take them wherever he
Gosh.
was going to go.
It's like he's
deliver
getting
his
more and
shit.
more brazen as he goes on.
Yes. Yep. And this is exactly what happened to poor John Demachik. He was dumped near the Mexican border, and he actually, he wasn't found until Patrick gave up the location.
Mhm.
He doesn't kill again until 1973. So that was 1971. Now we're in 1973. He kills 17-year-old James Fletcher Barwick. James was also shot in the head, raped, dismembered, and dumped in Escondido, which is a suburb of San Diego.
Yeah.
He was found the same year that he died, but there were no leads in his death. His next victim was Ronald Dean Smith Jr., a 5-year-old that he suffocated. That's the end of the talk on that. So,
Oh,
yeah. If
oh
anybody's
my god.
wondering, Patrick was a fucking pedophile. Like,
Oh, well, yeah, we already had the 13-year-old victim,
right.
so.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is like more of a thing than you think. It's like maybe he randomly killed the 13-year-old because he happened to pick him up, but no, he was
No, he was a
looking
pedophile.
for, yes,
Yeah.
specifically looking for younger people. I do want to say that like we kind of talked about, like it was pointed out that he never really tortured his victims. He liked to kill them quickly because he was a product killer. The fucked up thing is that this 5-year-old is the only one that he didn't just shoot. He smothered, which is like, what the fuck? Like that's way fucking worse.
So weird. Yeah.
Yeah. But in general, he was like quick about the way he killed them, which I guess is a very small favor. Not like for him,
Not
him any
yeah.
better, but I'm glad the victims didn't like suffer, you know?
Right.
His next victim was 21-year-old Alberto Rivera, and his body, which was found in 1975 in San Juan Capistrano, which was also the same year he was murdered, led to police officially opening a case looking for a killer they called the trash bag killer, because
Trash
now
bag.
they've got a couple bodies. By November of 1975, so the same year, 6 bodies in total were found, all of whom were shot in the head, sodomized post-mortem, cut up with a hacksaw, and dumped in various locations in trash bags. And he didn't always dump their bodies together. He would dump like arms at one spot and legs at another, but he always used the exact same trash bags. So this was definitely part of like his thing. Like he had a brand of trash bag that he liked to use. He had a type of hacksaw that he liked to use. Like it was very meticulous and very much like a pattern. After Alberto, in 1976, came 20-year-old Larry Gene Walters, then 17-year-old Kenneth Buchanan, then 13-year-old Oliver Peter Melito, both taken from Redondo Beach, then 15-year-old Larry Armendariz, then 13-year-old Michael Craig McGee.
God, how many are there?
Oh, I'm not done. These are all in just 1976. Some of these are like days apart.
Oof.
After he got into his groove, he was killing around once a month for over a fucking year. Next, there was 23-year-old John Woods, then 17-year-old Larry Epsy. So that's his third Larry. So he must have been like a very popular name at the time.
Yeah.
Next is Wilfred Lawrence Faraday, who was 20 and taken while hitchhiking in San Diego. Then Randall Lawrence Moore, who was 16 and hitchhiking. There's 4 more in 1976, but we get the idea. And it's not that I don't want to say their names, but like this would take a really long time.
That's insane.
Yes. Then in 1977, he had 4 more victims, including 8-year-old Merle Hondo Chance, who I heard was a really great kid, but who was either grabbed by him or willingly got into his car. So I don't know if he was actually hitchhiking like most of the others, or just like snatched. But not the last one. Hondo was the last one, unfortunately. But just before him was 17-year-old John Otis LeMay, who was out hitchhiking. And this is the one who led to him getting caught.
Okay.
John's mom was super worried when he didn't come home after the weekend. He would often like go out, I guess, for like the weekend and like hang out with his friends and not necessarily like even tell his mom where he was. I mean, he was 17, he was almost an adult, whatever. But he'd always come home on Sunday because he was still in high school. So he'd always make it home and sleep at home and go to school on Monday, right? On March 13th, 1977, he did not come home. His mother went out looking for him. She called around, and one of his friends said, you should reach out to his friend Dave. He's like an older friend. I think he's like 34 years old, but he's friends with John. And John told me he was going to go to his house. So his mother was like, okay, where does Dave live? And the kid tells her where he lives. And so she goes to police and she's like, my 17-year-old is, supposedly hanging out with this 34-year-old man. He never came home. Here's the address, right?
Yeah.
The police don't do anything immediately, but they also don't ignore her because they have 8 bodies at this point with more turning up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It took them 2 months, and during that time is when 8-year-old Merle Hondo Chance was murdered. But eventually they were able to get a search warrant for the men's home. Apparently they'd come by to interview Patrick and Dave prior to this, and as soon as the cops left, Patrick and Dave fucking fled. Yeah. They went on the run to Texas. They were there for about a month before coming back to California. And during the time they were gone is when police were able to search their home. They went through all their shit, they just, whatever. So when they came back to California, I guess Dave and Patrick like decided to come back and turn themselves in. And they went into the Riverside police. I guess they had like 1 or 2 victims in Riverside. So they went to the Riverside police station, walked in. Dave pointed at the photos of them up on the wall and was like, hi, that's us. And that's how they turned themselves in. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like, hey, it's us. We're here. So you'll notice I haven't really mentioned Dave that much.
Yeah.
Because nobody's like sure how involved he was.
I was going to ask that. Like, he's fleeing with him.
Right.
Which implies some level of guilt.
Yeah. But there's no proof that he was actually really involved. And like John Otis LeMay, when he was murdered, Dave wasn't home. He came by to see Dave. Dave wasn't home. Patrick's like, oh, you want to come and watch TV? And John's like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll wait for him, whatever. And while he's there, Patrick fucking shoots him and kills him. So that was like a random one. It wasn't even, I may have said he was hitchhiking, but he wasn't. That was a mistake. Okay. I did say that. He actually came over to Dave's house to like hang out. And when he wasn't there, Patrick murdered him. So he definitely knew something, but his level of involvement is questionable. And he was arrested with Patrick, but like same day he was let go because Patrick was like, I did it all alone. It was me. He didn't know. Like he went on the run with me. Yeah, but like he wasn't really aware. They tied 28 murders to both of them at first. It's like even
28?
Even though Dave's released, they tie the murders to him. And a problem that I have, because this was in the 70s, was every single newspaper refers to them as homosexuals.
Of course. Yeah. Of course they do. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, the homosexuals murdered these guys. And it's like, they don't mention what they do for a living. They don't mention anything else. Right. They're like, the two homosexuals, like over and over and over.
That's anytime that there's a killer who's gay in this period. It's like gay sex killing,
Yeah. Like, it's like, dude,
automatically. Yeah.
It's like they don't go like the heterosexual killed everybody. You know what I mean? Like
straight sex murder. Yeah. No, they don't do that. Yeah.
So I kept seeing that. And I was like, that's really fucked up.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's an aside. I mean, it couldn't happen to nicer people, but it's still not cool. Anyway, so he was released, never charged. Patrick was like, if you let him go, I will admit everything. I'll lead you to bodies, yada, yada, yada. So he led police to like 8 bodies, took responsibility for the 8 that had been found. And as I mentioned, also told police about a ton that even though they were looked for, they were like never found. Some of them, he directed police to where the bodies had been, but the bodies had already been found and just never identified. They had no information. So they started putting the puzzle pieces together. In all, it is suspected that he might be responsible for as many as 43 murders.
Wow. Jesus.
Yes.
That is a high number.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. But at least 28, like confirmed.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Minimum.
And he admitted to more. So I'm going to go with more. I'm going to go with
28 plus. Yeah.
Yes, easily plus. And it's weird the way he talked about it. Like one of the victims that he admitted to, police were like, well, do you know where he is? And he's like, oh, yeah, you're not gonna find him. And he was almost like apologetic, like, oh yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry about that one, guys.
Yeah, like super disposed of him. Like, but it's so like emotionless and like
Yeah.
casual. It's like super fucking scary.
Yeah, well, that's his whole MO, is not like seeing these people as people.
As people,
So,
right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, sorry, I threw that away. Like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
Ugh, fucking creepy.
Yeah.
So he was given life in prison because at this point the death penalty was abolished in California.
Mhm.
And he is still in prison to this day because he's still
No.
alive. He's 82 years old.
Is he in San Quentin?
He is.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh.
Yep.
Okay.
Dave died in 1991. He was like 50 or 51. I don't know what he died of. But yeah, Patrick's still alive. Dave went on to live like whatever, like, you know, continued his life and whatever. I don't even know what happened to him.
Okay.
But I think the reason that Patrick was able to get away with this so long, again, is because of his diminutive size. He was very
Mhm.
small and unassuming. He like worked in aviation as like an engineer, so he was like a
He
super
looks like
dorky-
a dork, yeah. for
yeah.
sure.
And I think a lot of his like weird behavior was either ignored or overlooked, much like he was ignored and overlooked, which is how he was able to murder all of these hitchhikers, which very luckily did not include my dad. Yeah, so thank you to all
Yeah.
of the multiple freeway killers for not murdering my dumbass hitchhiking father so that I could be
Ooh.
here to talk shit on you today, you fucking
The
asshole.
guy is like the opposite of Ed Kemper, because Ed Kemper is gigantic and
Yes.
very noticeable.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
they couldn't be more different in their like,
Yeah.
physical stature. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
All
Yeah.
right.
So who's yours
That
for
was
today?
great. I didn't know anything about that guy either. So now I know
Dude.
another neighbor in the San Quentin like roommate situation.
Yes.
I always just find that endlessly fascinating that a bunch of serial killers are like this guy's hanging out with Charles Ng, like they're having breakfast together.
Yeah,
You know?
they're like chilling.
Yeah, like
shit. Yeah.
that there's a box we keep up there full of serial killers. It's like
Yep.
when I've driven by it too, I'm like, there they are. Like there's all
it's
all those serial killers.
scary, man. Like part
I
of
mean,
me is
some
like,
of them are in
"Ooh."
other prisons, like
Well,
scattered
right.
around.
No,
but
there's a good concentration in there though.
yeah,
I always think
density.
about that. Like we're so our proximity to them is so fucking close. Like it's fucking
Yeah.
terrifying when you
Yeah.
drive by. Yeah,
for sure.
kind of love it in a weird way. I mean, we are
Yeah.
here. We are here doing a podcast about true crime. So
All right. Well, this is going to be a long one, and I will not apologize because now with our new format, we can do that. We can kind of take our time.
Mhm.
I was going to do like a big one and a small one, but I accidentally picked this, and then I got so hopelessly obsessed with it. I was like, okay, well, I'm doing two big ones. That's fine.
Nah, dude, I fucking love it. Let's do it. Let's get wild.
And I've literally, before we came on here, I was like 5 minutes late because I was reading Reddit. So I've been like obsessively reading about this case. I watched a long documentary. This is the Alcacer girls. Do you know this? I didn't know
Not even a
anything
little
about
bit.
it.
Nope. I'm
Oh my God.
super excited. All right.
Woo, okay. Oh boy, buckle up, everyone. Get your
Yeah.
little like roller coaster seat thingy on you.
All right. I'm excited.
Buckle up.
I am buckled. I'm ready.
Okay. November 13th, 1992. Oh, well, I jump right into the date, but Miriam Garcia Iborra, who's 16, Antonia Tony Gomez Rodriguez, so she goes by Tony.
Okay.
She's 15. Miriam is 16, and our third girl is going to be Desiree Hernandez Folch, who's going to be 16. They
Okay.
are best friends from Alcacer in Valencia, Spain. They live like adjacent to each other, so even though some of them go to different schools, they're like best friends. They're just like I could go through their like who each of them were, but it's pretty typical teen stuff. They like to go skating, they like to go to the arcade, they're like mediocre students, like stuff
Sounds like
that.
everybody I've ever met
Totally
in my
normal.
life growing up.
1992, right? So they're just like early 90s teen girls
Right.
living their best life. There's like an audio recording too of right before this happened, like the day of Tony calling into the radio to request a song. And she sounds like a baby. It's like super cute. And the radio host is like, "What are you doing this weekend, Tony? Are you gonna stay home?" And she laughs and she's like, "No," So it's clearly these girls were like all about going out and partying too.
Yeah, I mean, I was just a couple years behind them, but like I feel
Yeah.
this very much.
They're
Yeah,
15 and
sure.
16. So
Yeah.
This night in particular, November 13th, they had wanted to go to the nightclub Couleur in Picassent, and they have like their heart set on going to this cool nightclub.
Right.
They've been before. It's about 4 kilometers. Everything's going to be European here. It's about
Okay.
4 kilometers from Alcacer. So it's kind of like neighboring cities here. I
Mhm.
read that somewhere that was like a 30-minute walk if they were going to walk it. So it's not that far.
It's not that bad, but I wouldn't be stoked to do that, honestly.
No. They asked Mia's father. Miriam goes by Mia,
Okay.
I believe. They asked Mia's father for a ride, but he says no because he's sick.
Ooh, bummer.
Tells them to take the bus. They end up they get together and they're walking around Alcacer. They go to an arcade. They're kind of seen at various points hanging out in the night there.
Mhm.
They visit a friend of theirs, Esther Hernandez, who was sick. They talk with her and they talk about their plans to either hitchhike or walk to the club. And Esther's mom actually says, "Don't hitchhike. Something bad will happen to you."
Dude, okay. Can we just talk about the mom curse for a second?
Mom curses. Yeah.
You can do that 100 times, and the second a mom says don't do that or something bad's gonna happen to you,
You listen to
next
that.
time
Mom.
you do it, yeah, because the
Yeah.
next time you do it, she's gonna be right. She has now cursed you with the mom.
Yeah. Listen to moms.
If this ever happens to you where you've done something that's maybe a little questionable, like 100 times, and then your mother or somebody's mother says, don't do this because X, Y, or Z is going to happen to you, don't do it anymore.
Don't do it. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So unfortunately, Desi and Desiree, Miriam and Tony end up hitchhiking to the club.
They did not listen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they kind of partly walk and hitchhike. It's a little unclear.
Okay.
But they definitely hitchhike. Their family is alarmed later that night and the following day when the girls do not return. To my knowledge, they're not seen at Couleur either.
Okay.
They go to authorities and a massive search starts. The disappearance will get, from the moment this starts as a disappearance, tons of publicity in the national news. They find a couple, Francisco Jose Cuevas and his girlfriend, who I didn't find her name, but who first picked them up, the first people they hitchhiked with, and they drove them like a really short while and dropped them off at a short distance and dropped them off at a gas station just outside of Picassent. So basically in the right direction, but a really short trip.
Huh. I wonder why.
We'll take you as far as the gas station. Yeah.
Yeah, like why even pick them up? But okay, whatever. I mean, whatever. Okay.
Just getting them a little further along their journey.
Sure.
So a week after the girls are missing, a witness who lives nearby the area where the girls were last seen in Picassent, Dolores Badal, comes forward and says that from her window, she saw the girls get into a white Opel Corsa that had a group of at least 4 men in it. I think she says 3 or 4.
That's just like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
This is the last sighting of them that's like confirmed.
Yeah, I bet.
And more on this media circus, which there's so much more I could say about this, but I'm trying to make it quick.
Yeah.
2 rival Spanish news hosts actually used the girls' disappearance and case in general to have a ratings battle.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
Yeah, and the shows competing are Quien Sabe Donde, like who knows where, and De Tu a Tu, like from you to you.
Okay.
And those have tons and tons of interviews with friends and family, and they're kind of competing to see who could get which interviews,
Okay.
But like I won't go down too far down that route, but it's a whole side thing that the documentaries talk about, and it's really gross.
That is so fucking, but it's also like, it's not like we don't do that here, like all the time.
And I feel like also the 90s is like peak media circus frenzy time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So January 27th, a couple, like 2 months after the girls are missing, in January 27th, 1993, near the Two Dam, TOUS, in the area near La Romana, which is a super small, like rural area, a beekeeper finds the bodies of the 3 girls.
Wow. That's fucked up.
This is really heartbreaking. He first sees an arm sticking out of the ground on it with a watch on it. And apparently this is Tony's arm, and it's recognized by the Mickey Mouse watch she was wearing when she disappeared.
So sad. Because they're children. They're little girls.
Yeah.
Like they're not. Yeah. God damn. That's fucking sad.
So the following day, their identities are officially confirmed. The parents, and this is just an aside, but it's super weird. The parents and extended family of all the girls are doing these long shifts sitting on these talk shows, and they're basically going through their grief publicly. And I can't think of another time where I've seen families very recently after getting the news that their loved one was murdered on TV. Like
Yeah.
that soon.
Yeah.
And their funerals broadcast on live television. Their caskets are paraded through the streets of Alcacer. It's a whole spectacle.
I'm wondering if that's just like a thing there. Like maybe that's normal and it's just
I don't
not.
know. Yeah, I mean, it was just it was
Yeah.
like our like John Bonet. You know, it was like this was their like huge case.
Right. Okay.
So the
Okay.
scene, I have to say straight up that the investigators bungle everything, and that is going to make this case ambiguous. And I will talk about that more. But the scene is bungled as fuck by investigators and first responders. They start excavating the bodies right away. They do not take any photos of how it was to start. They move all kinds of stuff around.
Yeah.
And at the scene, they find a ton of random shit, including shell casing, a man's glove, 3 belts, binoculars, just a bunch of random garbage. I won't go through the whole inventory, but there's a picture of it online and in the documentary that's like a fuck ton of just random,
that they've just kind of
detritus. Yeah.
Not even
it's just thrown around. Some of it was in the pit with the girls.
Oh, these fucking idiots.
And they also find outpatient paperwork for Enrique Angles.
Okay.
Boop, 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 boop. Sorry. So that's their first like clue.
Right.
So police show up at Enrique's house where he lives with his family, and arrest him. And who else is Miguel Ricart, his friend who's 23, knocks on the door in the middle of this raid and is like, hello.
Like, I'm also here.
Yeah. So they arrest him too. Antonio, Enrique's brother, Antonio Angles, is not there at the time.
Okay.
But his sister will say on this documentary that he was home and escaped out the window and climbed up to the roof and then hopped rooftops away.
Okay. Because he's super innocent. He had nothing to do with it, right?
Also, that didn't happen. So this case is very ambiguous. No, it's almost certain that he just wasn't home.
So what's his sister doing? She's trying to be involved?
I don't know. It's very unclear why people say he ran away on the rooftops. Maybe he did. I don't know. There's a lot of ambiguity.
It sounds like the media really likes over the top shit, and so maybe they're trying to play into it. It sounds like that could actually be like something that informs the way that people behave. It's like postmodern.
Yeah. So it's no, it's true. I get what you mean. Yeah, no, it's very, very disputed. Lots of aspects of this. So I'll put like, did he run out the window? Question mark. Just
was he jumping rooftop to rooftop? We don't know.
Was he Spider-Man? We don't know. So this group of guys is their kind of target here, and they're all kind of like an associate. Especially Miguel and Antonio Angles are like they're like a duo. They're buddies.
Right.
They find Miguel also has a white car matching the witness description of that lady. So that's why they're like zero in on Miguel especially.
Okay.
At first, they take Enrique in, who clearly he's got like several different mental things happening. He has like a low IQ and all that stuff that they usually say.
Yeah.
Enrique at first pleads guilty, but the police actually take his mental issues into account and realize he does not know what he's doing or saying. And Enrique pivots and tells them that his very violent prison brother, Antonio, who's been in and out of prison, violent prison brother.
I'm leaving that. That's amazing.
Okay. What I meant is his violent brother who's been in and out of prison.
Okay.
I did write down violent prison brother.
I love that.
Yeah. His brother Antonio sucks. He's very violent. And he said, he's been stealing my identity. So maybe that's what this is about. And they're like, okay. Interesting. Antonio's been impersonating him and stealing his stuff and paperwork. And Antonio had been on leave from prison and just didn't go back. So he at this time was a fugitive.
Oh, okay.
You know how people like other countries give you like a break from prison, a little prison vacation?
I have kind of heard about this. I don't understand the concept, so it's hard for me to like.
I think some states we do that actually, like to go to like someone's funeral or something. We give like
this
I forget what it's called.
Like everybody gets a summer vacation, even if you're a prisoner for like murder.
Yes.
You're getting out for summer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fucking bizarre. Okay.
So he was on a prison leave. And just a bit about Antonio. He was a horrible person by all accounts.
Sounds like it.
He bullied his poor mom, who worked tirelessly to support the family. He bullied his sister. He was always beating like everyone in his family, his siblings and his mom.
Jesus.
Just beating the shit out of them. He would throw knives at them.
Jesus.
His sister would say in a later interview that she didn't think he was capable of empathy.
Yeah, he sounds like there's something missing big time.
And he says a lot when the whole family of someone is asked, like, could this person be capable of this? And they're all like, yep.
Like, not only could he, we bet he did. Like,
oh yeah, 100% he could have. Yeah.
He's a violent prison brother.
He's a violent prison brother. He's a psychopath. And what was he in prison for, you asked, that he was on leave from? This is going to be very significant.
I bet it was non-violent.
Oh no, it was very violent. He's not just like a drug dealer. I think Miguel had charges for like related to drugs and like stealing cars, but Antonio has like violent charges.
Okay.
He was in prison for tying a woman to a pillar and beating her for an entire day.
Holy
for stealing
fuck.
Because she stole heroin from him.
Ooh, wow. He didn't kill her though.
No, just severely beat her.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Miguel at first denies everything, and eventually on his fourth statement, he confesses in full.
Okay.
And note here that a lot of people think this case is actually very divided, and more so than I first realized. A lot of people think his confession was coerced by torture.
I mean, it is the fourth one. Immediately when you said that, my brain went to like,
yep,
not real. Did he really do it?
It did have a lot of discrepancies, and it did change in each iteration leading up to this one. Okay. And this last one also came after the autopsy, so people would claim that what he's saying is fitting into the evidence so well because the police had more information
to him. Yeah.
So I won't go through all the little tiny discrepancies because we'll be here all day. But suffice to say, people question his confession.
That's fair.
So he states, this is the confession, though this is the official narrative, TM, official narrative of the Spanish state.
Okay.
So Miguel states that with Antonio Angles, he picked up the girls. He presumably telling them that they would give them a ride to the nightclub. The story he tells, I'm going to go through it, trigger warning, is fucking horrifying and fits the autopsy. Again, like what the autopsy found happened to them.
Okay.
He said that when they didn't stop at the nightclub, the girls began to panic and scream, and Antonio punched them and pistol whipped them in the car.
Whoa. Okay.
They drove them to a crumbling, ruined house near the two dam. And on the way there, the girls kept asking where are we going, begging the boys to let them go.
Right.
And these guys are like 23, begging the young men to let them go. And Antonio says, shut up, like whatever, do what we say. At the house, when they're at this dilapidated house, Antonio ties up two of the girls and rapes the other one, I think Desiree, and then threatens Miguel with violence if he does not also rape her, which he does.
Okay, so that's interesting that makes me think the confession may be a little bit more real, because that's not something the police would necessarily know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's like a piece of information that's more editorial in a way. You know what I mean?
What,
like,
that he threatened him and stuff?
Yeah. That feels like something that he didn't have to say. Like, there's no way the police would know that by looking at the bodies.
And there's two ways you could take this. You could say he's trying to like make himself look like the less guilty one, but in the confession, and put everything on Antonio. But by all accounts of the people who knew these guys, Miguel was more passive, and he was the follower in this sort of crime duo, where Antonio was much more aggressive.
Okay, so that sounds legit then.
It's quite possible, yeah.
Okay.
They then, according to Miguel, left the girls tied up to the pillar. Again, tying women to pillars.
The pillars, that's a thing, okay.
They tie the girls up to this pillar. And like also just like take a moment and Google Alcacer girls murder house, because you have to see how fucking spooky as fuck this place is.
Are you going to put it on the Patreon?
I could, yeah. You gotta go.
We should put it on the map.
Like, seriously, Google this shit, Cindy. Like, it's so terrifying. It's so spooky. And ugh. Anyway, they leave them there tied up in, this is a literal dilapidated ruin in the middle of a ravine.
That's fucking crazy.
With like a dirty old mattress. And by the way, they were known to stay in this abandoned house and like just hang out there. Later on, supposedly, this is question 2, but DNA would be belonging to their brothers was found there. But they were kind of known to use this random house in the middle of this, ravine for a flop house, basically, just like hanging around.
And I'm
fact
wondering. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, so I was going to say the fact that there's like a dirty, crappy, disgusting mattress there and all that trash of theirs kind of lends me to believe that they did use it for that.
That's what I was going to ask. But is there any DNA evidence or any sort of evidence that the girls were ever actually there?
Well, that's where their bodies are found. So,
oh, it is. Oh, I didn't realize they were like right there. Okay.
Yeah. So the house is in the 2 Dam in La Romana, and that's where they're found. They're going to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. They raped one of the girls. They have them tied to the pillars. And what do? They go drive 22 kilometers away to Catadao to get dinner.
Okay.
They get food, they get some beers, and then they come back. They take a break. And after doing so, they rape I think a third girl. They're all raped at one point. I don't have the exact order here.
Yeah, it's not important.
No, that's the fact is that it happened.
Yeah.
And they spent the rest of the night basically assaulting and torturing them. We know the girls were tortured. Yes.
Oh, God.
At one point, Desiree's nipple was cut off. Supposedly. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
They also stabbed her in the back. Miriam and Tony were beaten with literal sticks and stones.
Wow. I wonder what it was about Desiree that they it sounds like they kind of singled her out a bit.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah.
Miriam had also been sexually assaulted with a sharp object. Possibly post-mortem.
Oh God, I fucking hope so. I mean,
right. It's disgusting.
I just hope so.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah.
So we know they were extensively tortured and they were raped, et cetera, et cetera. It's fucking horrible. Yeah. Eventually they walk them into they take the time to dig a pretty shallow grave and they walk them there and shoot them.
Ugh.
Yeah. And they spent the night. This was an all night long event.
Jesus.
And the Antonio and Miguel slept on this gross mattress with a piece of carpet over them. It's a really disgusting scene all in all.
Also, what are they doing? They're not the fucking captives. They don't have to sleep under carpet. What the fuck? They're just.
This is just their flop house.
This is their
flop house.
They obviously don't have any value for anybody, themselves included, that they're fucking behaving that way,
Yeah.
Ugh.
And at one point also it's interesting that Miguel says, this is before they're ultimately murdered, that Antonio leaves for a few hours and Miguel's just there chilling, I guess.
Just hanging
for Antonio
out
to get back.
and not letting them go.
No.
Ugh.
Antonio comes back and presumably, so Antonio shoots them according to Miguel and buries them in the shallow graves, which thankfully were very shallow. And in the winter rains, they eroded, allowing people to see the bodies they literally emerged. Yeah.
Okay. Jesus fucking Christ, dude.
Yeah. So a bit about this autopsy. It showed that at least 2 girls had been shot in the head. All of them had severe head injuries, and apparently 2 were decapitated. So I've seen different things about their injuries, not all of which match up with the official Miguel story.
Okay.
But I've seen basically a variety of horrific injuries listed. Their hands were bound by rope when they were found. And however, according to many, this first autopsy was comically bungled.
Mm-hmm.
They washed the bodies.
That's not a thing that you do.
No, just of all the evidence, they discarded the bugs that were on them, which could have been evidence.
Have these
apparently,
people, who did they hire to do this? Just some randos? Hey, can you guys come in?
It seems like it, yeah. And apparently they also did quote unquote unnecessary amputations, which I read.
That's actually kind of scary. Why are they doing that?
These poor girls' bodies are going through a second round of chopping up for some reason.
Yeah, they hired a serial killer who
yeah.
That's insane.
So yeah, there's a first autopsy which is bungled, supposedly.
Yeah.
Then the family and what everyone the family hires a second autopsy person to come in and do a second autopsy. However, this second autopsy is also criticized because it's performed by this hokey TV doctor guy who loves being on TV. And he says he found evidence of 5 perpetrators and a cross inside one of the girls' bodies. So this must be a satanic ritual murder.
Oh God, they probably had him do it because they couldn't afford they couldn't afford it if he didn't get like the press. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the
oh,
prosecutors will then condemn this autopsy as bogus. So
yeah.
basically, the girls had 2 bunk autopsies.
That's so fucked
So
up.
it complicates things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, I do not even have time to get into the full magnitude and like little elaborate like twists and turns of this. But the whole 5 perpetrators satanic ritual murder thing becomes this alternative conspiracy theory fueled at one point by the family to some degree and in large part by the media,
Right.
that Miguel's confession was coerced, but then it was also all a cover-up for a cabal of very powerful people who were trying to make a snuff film. And no.
If they're that powerful, those girls aren't going to wash up, you know? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like, come on.
Yeah, it's very, very, it gets very elaborate, that this narrative. I'm just giving you the quick version.
Okay.
But the other versions say that Miguel and Antonio were just sort of like the muscle, getting the girls to the site for this like cabal, and burying them for them. And Juan Ignacio Blanco, who's one of the key leading TV journalists trying to get ratings out of this, comes out and says that he received the snuff tape from a priest in Alcacer.
Oh, come on.
But he can't show it though. But like, you know, he has it. And he ends up getting sued by the guys in this supposed cabal of secrecy, which they're naming these suspects and saying, you did this satanic ritual murder. So those guys then sue Juan Ignacio Blanco. And there's a long, you know, history of the lawsuits where they sue him multiple times. He's charged with like 300,000 euros in fees.
Jesus, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's a whole other side thing. Okay.
God damn. Okay.
So Miguel ends up getting a sentence of 170 years.
Cool. All right.
For some unclear reason. I don't know why he gets that sentence, because per Spanish law, you can only serve 30 years. So I think it's just a ceremonial thing.
Can they do, okay, so the most you can do is 30 years, but it can't be like consecutive?
No, it's 30 total. That's their law. So I don't know what the 170 is about. I guess it's just symbolic or something.
We're very mad.
Yeah, I don't know. So he's expected to serve 30, and you know, this is an exceptionally horrible crime, but in general, I kind of like that type of law. Obviously, that's better than what we do.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's
hard to feel good about this.
Yeah.
Unbelievably, Miguel got out in 2013 after serving only 21 years.
Holy shit.
And he got out on good behavior, basically. And because the good behavior, like getting out clause had been disallowed for him, but then that ruling is overturned. And they're like, nope, your behavior was good. You're free to go.
Wow.
Miguel's lived in France off and on. He's only run into trouble that we know of for buying drugs. And he still maintains his innocence and says the confession was false.
Okay.
That's what he said the whole time.
Has said, I wasn't there. It had nothing to do with me.
And I was coerced into confessing. Yeah.
Okay.
So where the fuck is Antonio?
Yeah. I'm like,
let's circle back. Let's circle back to Antonio.
Yeah.
Officials have discounted the story that he, you know, escaped out the window. That's a whole side thing that happened. She says it happened on this documentary, and I was like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
But either way, he got away. He was sighted in Minglanilla in Cuenca in Spain, but we know after that he got to Lisbon in Portugal, and he escaped on a container ship.
Oh shit.
We know this because a British sailor on the ship would later testify that he saw Antonio, he identified him, stealing food on board the ship, which was headed for Ireland.
Right.
Out of Lisbon. And he saw this around 2:45 a.m. He then detained Antonio in a cabin and shut it from the outside, basically to like detain him.
Mm-hmm.
And when he returned the next morning, he found him gone and the window open of the cabin. This gets weirder, he then found him floating on a raft and returned him to the ship. Again, they're docking here. And then he escaped again, a second time, via a rope to the dock from his window.
Okay, stop putting the guy in a room with a window that
with
opens.
Windows. Yeah.
Yeah, like what? Like
windows.
Figure it out. Oh, he escaped out the window. Back in the room with the window. Like,
you won't do this again. Yeah. So he does it again. He's out of the window again. A life jacket was later found floating just off the shore, from this ship.
So he probably fucking just dumped it and ran.
Yes.
I wouldn't think that if they found the life jacket floating in the middle of the ocean, I'd be like, oh, he died. But if they find it near the shore, it's because he threw it off of his body when he got out of the water.
So the official theories with Antonio are, one, that he may have jumped overboard off the ship and drowned in this moment, which I don't think so.
Nope.
Or that he went overboard and escaped. And please note that he was also an incredibly good swimmer.
Okay.
Everyone says that was very noted about him. He's like a pro swimmer.
It's a very strange thing to note about just anybody, so it must have been a thing.
Violent criminal and an excellent swimmer.
Yeah.
Those are the two things.
Yeah.
Those are the two main things about Antonio.
Fuck.
And he was actually Brazilian by nationality. Yes, the family here is, I guess, not just Antonio, but they hold Brazilian passports. So he is theoretically made his way to Brazil, or is traveling somewhere using his Brazilian passport. He has
but it has his name, right?
Yeah, who knows? But he also has a bunch of aliases as well, so it's hard to know how he's getting around.
I mean, I guess he was like kind of like a criminal, so he probably has things in. Yeah, okay.
He's still to this day one of the top most wanted fugitives internationally, and he is definitely alive. I think, because he was young enough at the time, his early 20s.
Yeah, no, he's like not even that old. He's like 50 something probably.
Yeah, he's like 50, 40s, 50, and so he's definitely out there. He was the lead murderer in this horrific rape, murder, torture of these 3 girls,
and he just got away.
He got away, so it's a very unsatisfying ending. But yeah, the case is really ambiguous. I did a lot of Reddit research, trying to find people arguing back and forth about it, and ultimately, like, I think I see the case for the confession being coerced, and the police bungling the shit out of everything also feeds into that.
Yeah.
However, I do kind of believe the official narrative, because I think that paper was found there.
Right.
And because I think those 2 guys were using that house.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Partying there, and they had that mattress there, and I think that it just checks out. I think that they did this.
The cops got lucky, even though they bungled it, but their bungling it throws some
it creates conspiracy theory.
Yeah, for
fuel
sure.
onto the fire. So
it's like they fucked everything up, but they happen to get lucky. But then people are like, nah. Because also, 4th confession, that's definitely somebody getting tortured into admitting. You know, so
so it's ambiguous. I can't say for sure. I could do more research on Reddit at 3 a.m. and find that I disagree with what I just said. So I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it's a really horrible but fascinating case.
Yeah. Wow, that's fucked up. Jesus Christ, those poor little girls.
Yeah, it's either way. Whoever did it, that we do know they were tortured and suffered for a long time before they died.
I think it was them. I think it was the brothers.
Yeah, I agree.
Although, what about the other people in the car?
Well, Antonio and Just Miguel, they weren't brothers technically, but
or not the brothers. Sorry,
but people actually speculate that some of Antonio's brothers could have been involved, but that's hypothetical. Yeah, people think there were also more than just the 2 of them, and that's Miguel's never admitted to, because he kind of retracts things right away. So we've never heard about the possible other people, but there's definitely theories about that.
Right. The reason that I thought that is because you originally said that they got into a car with like 3 or 4 guys.
Yes. And there's a lot of stuff found and the 3 belts, and there's a lot of stuff found at the dump area.
Yeah, why would 2 guys have 3 belts? That's fucking weird.
I mean, it could be cumulatively if they've been there for like months,
Yeah. I mean, leaving belts at all is really fucking weird. So
it is.
The whole thing is very, very strange. Very strange.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the whole story. I think we have a true part of the story, but I don't think we have the whole story.
I agree. We definitely don't have all the suspects. We don't have the whole story.
Yeah.
We don't have the answers for all the stuff at the dump site, for instance.
Yep.
And the police, the police bungling everything makes it so unclear what happened, and it makes it so we might never find out the full story.
It really does open it up for a ton of bullshit. So
yeah, but I think Antonio's still fucking out there.
Yeah.
And
it's fucked up. Okay, don't hitchhike, you guys. Don't fucking do it.
Don't do it.
Take the bus, call an Uber, and be careful. Make sure that the person who shows up is actually an Uber driver.
Yeah, there was just a case like that very recently. I forget the girl's name, where she got into a car that wasn't an Uber. Remember that?
Yeah, that's a good list.
Really recent.
Really scary.
Scary.
To kind of piggyback on this, but yeah. Anyway, okay, so that's our first 2. We'll have 2 more for you in a couple of days. Thanks everybody for listening. Once again, like, rate, review. Please share us with your friends. Get the word out. Recently, somebody recommended us in that true crime group, and somebody commented like, "Oh, I've been recommended this podcast by somebody else already," and I was like, "Oh my god, people are talking about it!"
Ooh, so fancy.
Yes, I feel fucking cool. So,
Nice.
yeah, keep that up, guys. We love you. We appreciate you. And until the next half,
Stay.
off our
Last.
list.
Careful.
Bye.